Okay, so let's start again. We're at siman ayin vav. We're up to sif tes vav. La'achar chazara shmeina esrei by mincha. After you finish davening, noegin loymar tzidkas chatzedek. The minig is we say tzidkas chatzedek. Now the interesting thing is that if you look in a siddur by our siddurim for mincha and Shabbos, we don't say tzidkas chatzedek, right? So we start off with tzidkas chatzedek kel, yeah. What? So we have a different order of how we do the same psukim. Yeah, tzidkas l'karekel, then we do tzidkas l'alekim, and then we do tzidkas l'tzedek. These are three psukim, by the way, from three different places, but they're put together in a tefillah. So if you look in the little Alter Rebbe there, it says l'nusach Rabbeinu, according to Alter Rebbe, maskil b'pasuk tzidkas l'karekel. So we start differently. Now, the reason why we do that is we're following nusach Svard, which is the most accepted nusach. The nusach Arizal is incorporating a lot of nusach Svard, which was from Spain. The Yidden who came from Spain to other places in North Africa and Eretz Yisrael. And the reason why we switch it, according to Kabbalah, is because of who the psukim reference. So the first pasuk, the way we do it, tzidkas l'karekel, is talking about Yosef. The next one is Moshe, and the next one is David. Okay, so we do it in that particular order. Now, if you look at why? So he explains, these are three different psukim, and we do them ke'ein tziduk hadin. We do this as a process of what we call tziduk hadin. Tziduk hadin is when we justify the Eibishter's behavior. So, le'aleinu, if someone passes away, so by there's an idea where we do, let's say, Yosef B'Seich, different things that we say have to do with some sort of idea of accepting Hashem's judgment and justifying Hashem's judgment. So over here we do the same thing, and we do them for shloisha tzadikim shenifteru b'shazos. We do it for three tzadikim who passed away Shabbos afternoon. Who are they? Yosef, Moshe, and David. So that's why we have our orders, because of the seder of who they are referencing. Now, let's say it happens on a weekday when you normally wouldn't say tachnun. So just like you don't say tachnun and you don't say all these types of things during the week. So if it's on Shabbos, you would do the same thing. Now, however, if you're davening in the house of an avel, so then, even though in a house of a base avel, you don't usually say tachnun, but nevertheless, over here, we would say it on Shabbos in that house. Why? Because the if you don't end up saying it, have a parhasia. That is a public setting. The in avelos beparhasia b'Shabbos, we don't do avelos in a public setting on Shabbos. Now, this is also the reason why maybe you've seen that on Mincha, on Shabbos, after Mincha, people don't say Good Shabbos anymore. Why don't you say Good Shabbos anymore? Because basically, after this idea of Tziduk Hadin, you're in a semi-quasi state of Avelos. We're not actually in Avelos, but we reference the idea of three tzaddikim who passed away. And when you're in Avelos, you don't do Shila Shalom, you don't ask people, you don't wish them Good Shabbos or Shabbat Shalom or whatever you want to say. So people in that case would just, they nod, they say hi, they don't say anything. During nights, they never say hi, so it's not a problem anyways. Yeah. Now, the Rebbe also in 770 would basically do the same thing. He really wouldn't wish people Good Shabbos. There were, I think, times that he would wish particular people maybe Good Shabbos, but overall, after that point, they wouldn't. So that is the meaning of what we do. Now, if you look in the Alter Rebbe, the parentheses again, he just mentions Noegin Leimer Pirkei Avos. People have a meaning that they do say Pirkei Avos. Perek Echad B'chol Shabbos. We do one perek every single Shabbos. Shebein Pesach LaAtzeres. And you do this by Mincha after Mincha. Even the fun of Mishnah is Kol Yisrael. You also say the Mishnah of Kol Yisrael. V'achar Mishnah is Rabbi Chanan ben Akasha. So that is meaning number one. Meaning number one is from Pesach to Shavuos. We do the 6 Pirkei Avos, and it works out perfect. So you get the Torah. It's an idea of Derech Eretz and all the idea of Kadmon the Torah, etc. But then V'yesh Noegin Kein Kol Shabsos Hakayim. Some people have a meaning where we say this for the whole summer. So on the bottom he says V'chein Minaginu. This is actually indeed our meaning. Ukadav v'nachin, and it actually makes sense. Benus b'neisef alaminas haperek. In addition to learning the perek in general, but kol achol yom and mishnas achas l'chol hapachis be'iyun kol chad l'fum shiur dilei. But one of the prakim, one of the mishnas, you should learn be'iyun. So in other words, a lot of people, they view it like Tilim. Yeah, they go through it very quickly, but they don't even know what they said. So what is proper is that at least one mishnah you should do be'iyun during that time. Now, b'shabsei sa'achreinos, b'shabsei sa'achreinos shel hashana, the last few Shabbosim of the year, meaning as you get closer to Rosh Hashanah. So sha'imrim az shnei prakim. Over there we say, right, let's say you have 4 weeks to the end. So the first 2 weeks you'll do one parak each, and the last 2 weeks you'll do two prakim each to finish all 6 before Rosh Hashanah. So then, if you're saying two prakim, Yeshleim are Mishnas Reb Chananya or Mishnas Kol Yisrael Gam Bein HaPrakim. So over here, the Rebbe writes that you should actually make it as if they're two separate ones. So you should say Kol Yisrael in the beginning, Reb Chananya after the first one. And then you say Kol Yisrael again, and Reb Chananya after the second one. So that is the Seder how we'll do it. When we get to this time of year, maybe I'll go over there's some interesting ideas about the novelty of learning Pirkei Avos by Mincha afternoon. We'll talk about it another time. Fine, but that's what comes out from there, yeah.
So Gemara says that when you in those 2 weeks that you say Pirkei Avos,
it could be more, it could be 3, it could be 4, depending 5. No, it could be any whatever. Whatever it is.
Say to like from Pirkei Avos.
It's not every year. Every year it's different. Some years you don't double any. Depends on the kvias and how it works out.
So you're saying that he would
has to do also, by the way, with Tisha B'av also. Because Tisha B'av, a lot of times, depending on when it falls out, if you end up learning that Shabbos or not. The famous machlekes, what happens if Tisha B'av is Sunday, or even if it's Shabbos, do you still say it? No, there's no answer on that. But everyone does something different. But,
so I'm saying that.
But some, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, go.
You can. So you're saying after you finish the first parak, you say Kol Yisrael.
Yes.
And then it's Rebbe Chananya.
Exactly.
Then again you would say.
No, you after the first parak you say Rebbe Chananya, and then you say Kol Yisrael on the next parak.
Yeah.
Exactly. You say it twice.
So after.
Yeah, exactly. You would do exactly. You would make believe as if you're doing two completely separate problem. Why? I'm not sure. I didn't look it up this year. I don't remember if the Rebbe even gave an answer, but that's what it is. Okay, Tezai. Now here we go into the next idea, which has to do with the tefillos of Shabbos and mistakes. Maybe we'll try to go through the whole thing. Okay, let's go. Let's see if we can finish this nakuda. So let's try not to interrupt. And it's not. Okay, let's see if we can do this. In Tab Shabbos Yom Tov, let's say a person makes a mistake in the middle of Shemoneh Esrei on Shabbos or Yom Tov. He starts weekday davenings instead of Shabbos davenings, right? Meaning in the middle of Shemoneh Esrei, after the first 3 brachos that are always the same. So let's say for Mincha and Shabbos, after Ata Kaddish, you do Ata Echad. You don't do Ata Chaynin, right? And you do Shachris, you do Yismach, or whatever, Yismachu. So you have all different Lashonis and what you do by different ones. So you made a mistake, you started the wrong one. The halacha is, Tzarech Ligmar Kol Eisei Bracha Shehischel. You have to finish the bracha that you started. That means if you start Ata Chaynin, you finish Ata Chaynin. Okay? Now, why is that? We'll see in a second. Besides to the Chazan wouldn't do this because he already davened once quietly before, so he wouldn't do it, according to the Kitzur Shulchan. But everyone else, if you start the wrong bracha, you finish it. Why? So he explained, when you finish, Mascha Bracha and Tzei Shabbos, Tzei Yom Tov, you go back and you do Ata Echad or Yismach or whatever the bracha is. Now, Vatamu, what's the reason? There's no reason why we change the tefillah on Shabbos than from any other time. Technically it should be. We'll get there. 1 second. Now, that really, according to the halacha, that you should say the same tefillah, right? And then what you should do on a Shabbos is you say it say just like in benching. But because you want to honor Shabbos, and therefore we have a Suda, we have all these other things. So the Chacham didn't want to burden someone with extra long davening. So instead they say you could do one bracha achas me'en sheva, you do one bracha that will incorporate all the themes of davening, and that's enough. Okay, Ava. If you start a weekday davening, this person who did that, so he should finish. Because it's a proper bracha for now as well. It's not preferred because we have a different order, but technically, there's no reason why you shouldn't be davening a weekday davening in theory. So therefore, we tell you to finish it. Okay? So say again? No, you just finish that one bracha. And then you go back to the regular Shabbos tefillah. So in other words, let's go. This is the rule. Okay? We're going to break it down. But for now, this is the rule. The rule is that if you start the wrong bracha, you should actually continue it. Because it's relevant now, just like any other day. Let's just go through this. Now, Yud Zayin, it's all continuation, so we'll get questions soon. Now, so again, the technical Shemoneh Esrei should be the same. And he asked about not asking your own needs in the middle of tefillah, so that's true, but when you're doing the nusach of the Chachamim, it's not a problem. It's only about asking personal by yourself, like in Shemiyat Tefillah, if you add other things or different times. But if you're doing it as in terms of a public thing, which is a standard, then you're allowed to do it. Now, Sif Yud Zayin is a continuation. How far into the bracha do you have to be? Even one word. Okay, you said one word. Let's say Ata. Yeah, what's the word of Ata Kaddish? The bracha after Ata Kaddish is Ata Chaynin. Yeah, So you do one word. You just said ata for atachenim instead, right? Which is already the wrong one. You were davening the wrong tefillah. Maybe you had to sit. Wait, hold on. Wait.
You gotta say the side of the
Wait, hold on. No, for now, let's keep it at atachenim. Yeah, you said the wrong word, so right away, you have to continue, right? V'niskam yad. You realize right away. It doesn't matter. Tzarich ligmar kol habracha. You have to finish the whole thing. Now, what's the exception sometimes? The exception would be chutz birchas atachenin, except for the first bracha after atakadosh, which would be atachenin. That im loy amen adayin rak teva ata. Let's say you only said the first word ata. Kivin shegam tefillah Shabbos arvis umincha maschilos ata. The reason why it would be different would be by ma'ariv and by mincha, because over here you have either ata kidashta or ata echad. So the first word ata is the same word. Atachenin, ata is the same word as these atas. So in that case, lachein, in tefillas arvis mincha, if it's by those two tefillas, where anyways it's the same word, so ava misha shachach shun Shabbos, even if you forgot it was Shabbos, you push it open to the wrong tefillah. And you had in mind that you were going to do a weekday tefillah. V'niskam yad shun Shabbos, and you realize right away it's Shabbos. You don't have to finish atachenin. You could do ata kidashta if it's Friday night, or if it's mincha, you do ata echad. Okay. Now this is by Friday night and Shabbos afternoon, when it's the same word. But what would happen if Yom came with Shachris? Let's say it happened by Shachris on Shabbos. Which on Shachris on Shabbos, it's not. You don't do ata. Yeah, the word is yismach Moshe. So if it's on Shachris, Azai, Imhoya Tosma, then it depends why you made a mistake. Why did you make a mistake? Imhoya Tosma, if you Pasha forgot it was Shabbos, you had the siddur was open to the wrong tefillah, you did the whole tefillah's chayil, which is a funny situation, but maybe. So tzarich ligmar birchas atachenin. Then you do finish atachenin. Because you made a mistake, you start atachenin thinking it's a weekday, thinking you're supposed to do it. So even though Shabbos, you have a different tefillah, but technically you could do atachenin, so you finish it. But let's say you know it's Shabbos. You came to shul, you didn't wear your talis, you have your kapata, your Shabbos gartel, yeah, whatever. You're davening the whole different tefillah. You're davening from the standard Shabbos davening, so you know it's Shabbos. And you also knew you have to do Yisach Moshe. Your siddur was open to Shabbos davening. Ella, so what happened? Your mouth moved too quick for your eyes. So by the time you realized Yismach, you already said Ata for Atachenin. So if that's the case, that's an honest mistake. You don't have to finish Atachenin because you never really intended to say it in the first place. So you could right away switch to Yismach Moshe. Because but there has to be a reason. It can't just be because why not, right? So here's the reason. The kibbutz sheyesh b'tfilei Shabbos gam kein tfilei shemaschiles ata, because out of all the 4 tefillas of Shabbos, some of them start with ata, Friday night and Shabbos mincha. So heavily kamesh atah b'tfilei Shabbos mizuluzu. So we consider it like you made a mistake from Shachris to Ma'ariv or Shachris to Mincha, which in that case me'achar sheyadashu Shabbos, you knew it was Shabbos. You only said one word, so we could make believe you made a mistake internally within Shabbos. And if you make a mistake internally, you didn't say Atachenin. You just said Ata of Ma'ariv. Okay, so flip over to Shachris. Okay, so here, one more time. If it's Friday night or Shabbos afternoon, and you say the word Ata, then you're good. You just switch to the correct tefillah. If it's Shachris, now there is no Ata. You're supposed to say Yismach. So then it depends why you made a mistake. If your mistake was that you thought it was Pasha the weekday, so then you have to finish Atachenim because you made a mistake and you're in the wrong zone and you have to continue as you were. But if you knew it was Shabbos, your siddur was open to the right page, your mouth moved too quickly. So then, if you only said the word Ata, you right away pivot to Yismach because we consider it as if it's an internal Shabbos mistake, which you could exchange the tefillas within Shabbos itself. 1 second. Now, Yudches, it's all one continuation. So let me just finish. Im loy niskar ada brachos achronos. Let's say you only remembered much later. Yeah, you finished the whole thing. The Haidu mean Ritzei will Alon. You went all the way till Ritzei. So Paisik be'emtza bracha b'makam sheniskar. You stop where you are if you're still Mishman Esrei. O Maschan, you go back b'shal Shabbos or Yom Tif. You go back to Yisach Moshe or whatever it is, and you start from there v'gemer keseder. Let's say you only remember after you finish Yiyu l'ratzayin, the end of Shemay Esrei. Which Yiyu l'ratzayin? The Alter Rebbe here they add Hasheni, the second one. Right? Right, because then you finished all your tefillos, the Lakai Netzur is this Tachnunin, you finished all that also, so now you're done. So then, Chayzul Reish Tefillah. But if it's only after the first Yiyul Ratzin, then you could go back without starting again, you could just go back to Yismach. This is what? You would repeat it.
Finish the second one?
If no, you always have to go back. The shaila is how far do you go back? So if you didn't finish Shemoneh Esrei, so you're still in the sugya, go back to Yismach or wherever it was. But if you finish the second Yiyu L'Ratzon, which means that you finish the whole Shemoneh Esrei, then you have to repeat the whole Shemoneh Esrei from the beginning.
Because when you have from, you have to repeat from.
If you're in middle of Shemoneh Esrei, just from Yismach Moshe, whatever the Shabbos part starts after Ata Kadosh. But if you actually finish, you have to go back to the beginning. Now, B'tfilas Musafin. What happens by Musaf? Now, Musaf is a totally different situation. Why? Because you don't daven Musaf on a weekday. Musaf is an added tefillah. So, B'tfilas Musafin in Tabe Birchas and Tzoi Shachol. Let's say you made a mistake in the middle, and instead of doing after Ata Kadesh, we do Tikant Shabbos. Yeah. So instead of that, you started to do any of the middle brachas of regular weekday. So Poisek be'emtza bracha sheniskabo. You stop right away. Why do you stop right away? Because none of those brachas are supposed to be said now. It's not like it's shachris, you could have done this or that. It's musaf. You don't daven musaf on a weekday. So you stop right away. It's all of atala. And instead, umascha bracha and tzaysh tfilas musaf, you go right away back to Tikant Shabbos. Musaf, there's no reason to daven any of these brachas, even the weekday ones, because you don't daven them on the weekday. And therefore, you would go back. Now let's just finish this, yeah? If someone did this by mistake, so the halacha is siman ala. It's not a good sign. If you actually daven the wrong davening, it's not great. The yafashlish b'maisav, you should search your behaviors kol yimei hashavua of that week of haba of the next one, and then the yasa tshuva you should do tshuva. Okay, so in other words, it could be a sign. You should look into it and think about why you made a mistake. So and try to correct it for the future. Maybe you should be looking in the Siddur more. Fine. Let's say you're in the middle and you did, let's say, mincha instead of shachris or shachar or ma'ariv instead of this. You made an internal mistake. So if you remember, before you say the bracha at the end of, right before it say Mekadesh Shabbos, so then after you go back to the correct one. So in other words, if you made a mistake in the middle of the Shabbos before you finish the bracha, no problem, go back to the beginning. But if you made the bracha of Mekadesh Shabbos, if you just said Hashem's name, so Gomer, you finish it, Mekadesh Shabbos, but you don't repeat anything. Because, like we said before, Lefi, the main brachas in the middle is really Ritzei Navim Nuchasenu, like doing Ritzei during benching, yeah? You say that by all the tefillas, besides Musaf, we'll get to Musaf in a second. But for Shachris, Mincha, Ma'ariv, Shachris, and Mincha, the real bracha for Shabbos is Ritzeinu Nuchasenu, and that's the same. So even though you said Kidashta, or you said Yismach instead of Ata Kidashta, or whatever, okay, you didn't do the right one, it's not ideal. But if you finished, then you don't repeat Shemoneh Esrei. If you're still in the middle, then you could go back and say the correct one. Now, as we said, when would this apply to which tefillas on Shabbos? Only Arvish, Shachris, and Mincha, because those are interchangeable. And with Tfilas Musaf, that's another story, because if instead of Musaf you said Ma'ariv, Shachris, or Mincha, again, this is not so common because we have Sidurim. They didn't necessarily all have Sidurim then, but okay. But if you made a mistake and instead of Musaf you did Shachris or whatever, Lo Yatza, you're not Yotza. Hayov Lo Yizkir Karban Musaf, because you didn't mention Karban Musaf. The whole idea of Karban Musaf is that it's an extra carbon. The same thing if you did Musaf instead of one of the other ones, also Lo Yatza. Hayov Yizkir Karban Musaf. In other words, that's a mistake. You're saying the wrong thing. So then you have to repeat the whole thing. Because, like we said before, Musaf is an added carbon. You don't normally do that. So you can't switch it with a Tamid. Tamid is Shachris and Muncha. And maybe Ma'ariv. But you can't switch that with a Musaf, which is a totally different thing. Now let me just finish the last sifir. In Tabet Tfilas Yom Tif, if you finish on a Yom Tif, you made a mistake on a Yom Tif davening, you're supposed to end off Mekadesh Yisrael, that Hashem benches us and we bench the Yom Tovim. V'chasam, and you made a mistake instead, you did Mekadesh Shabbos. So if you correct it right away, immediately, Yatza, it's fine. But if you don't correct it right away, so you have to go back to the beginning because you said the wrong bracha and you finalized that bracha, which means you weren't Yetza, and therefore you have to say the correct bracha. Okay, and that is the siman about all the mistakes that happen.